You better get on the phone and tell Bibi to implement an immediate ceasefire because the Chicago City Council, led by Mayor Brandon Johnson, has just passed a ceasefire resolution. That happened yesterday. Let's have a look.
I vote aye. Yeah!
Does this idiocy still surprise you? The cheering, the clapping, a city council passing a resolution for a ceasefire in a Middle East conflict. What do Israelis make of the reaction in the West, not just in the US, but UK, Australia as well?
Well, I have to say, by the way, watching that footage from Chicago, it reminds me of your previous segment, Rita. I mean, these are narcissists parading themselves, but they're not doing anything. Israel, like any other country, wouldn't be voted into a ceasefire because of the council in Chicago. Of course, it's just grandstanding and posturing, but it's very ugly, of course, because these people who've been doing this have been doing it from day one. They've been doing it from October the 7th, October the 8th itself. All these people called for a ceasefire of Israel before Israel's even fired anything. But I mean, personally, I think that it'd be much more useful for the citizens of Chicago to urge the Council of Chicago to call for a ceasefire in Chicago, because Chicago has one of the highest gun crime rates anywhere in America and in any developed country. You can have just, I mean, it's not even mass shootings, just individual shootings that add up to dozens of people wounded in an average weekend in Chicago. So I would urge them to look to home before they decide that they've got home so well sorted out that they can also afford a foreign policy in Chicago.
Good advice there. Now, you've written a piece today for The Spectator where you say the Tories have nothing to run on. What do the modern Tories stand for? What has happened to their conservative credentials?
That's a very good question. It's entirely unclear what they do stand for at the moment. Rishi Sunak seems to have made banning disposable vapes his main ambition of late. And I've always liked to think that the country could do more than that. But, you know, it's very strange. As I say in the piece, it gives a different meaning to the fag end of a Tory government. But the strange thing about the Conservatives is they've been in power for 14 years now. They've rotated through prime minister after prime minister. All of them have this increasingly glazed look on their face. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that they just have proved to be so weak in office. I mean, just this week, we heard that a Conservative MP is going to stand down because of threats to his life from jihadists, the burning of his office by some extreme Muslims, and the fact that his colleague Sir David Amess was killed by an Islamist who was apparently also going for this guy. And everyone's like, oh, it's sad that he has to stand down. I think, no, it's disgusting and disgraceful for our country that we would be in this position. But you know, this is a case on issue after issue. Immigration, they say stuff and then they don't do anything. They said they would reduce immigration to the lowest since the 1990s, and it's gone to historically high levels, closer to 1 million a year net in tens of thousands. So I think that, but I think very quickly, I think that the main thing is, Rita, that they've run out of the possibility of promising people a better life. The left runs on envy in its politics, and the right needs to run on aspiration. That you don't envy the other guy, work hard, and you'll get what the other guy has. And the Conservatives have not been able to do that because, among other things, they haven't been able to create a property-owning class among people in their 20s and 30s. So, you know, they've been in power for 14 years, and the question is, what did you do with it?
Well, exactly. They keep winning elections, but they governed like a Labor government. Look at the energy policy, look at the far left indoctrination that's evident in the education sector, in the bureaucracy. Even the counter-terrorism efforts have been compromised by leftist ideology, as you recently discovered.
That's right. And, you know, there's no excuse really for having, after 14 years in government, complaining that the civil service is left wing. And, you know, I just think, obviously, you should have worked that out very fast and had something to make sure the civil service was impartial, which is what it's meant to be. It's not meant to be left wing or right wing. It's just meant to be impartial and institute government policy. But yes, this excuse doesn't really run anymore, because you say you've been in power. What have you done with it? And the immigration thing is the most deadly on that. David Cameron said 15 years ago, when he was running to be Tory Prime Minister, he said that he would reduce net migration to the tens of thousands. And here we are at the far, far away point from that. And, at the next election, nobody will vote Labour with any great pleasure. Labour doesn't have very many ideas, or if it does, it's keeping them to itself. But no one will vote for Labour with pleasure, but nor will they want to turn out for the Conservatives, for a party I think that's let them down so many times.
We've got a cost of living crisis in many Western countries, but it's immigration, and particularly illegal immigration, that is becoming the critical issue in the UK and in the US, as we discussed earlier on the program. Douglas Murray, so good to speak to you again, and we'll speak to you next week. Thank you for joining me tonight.